I would like to call the meeting to order, and if you could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Again, thank you and good evening. Welcome to our November action meeting. Mrs. Sugars, could you please take roll call?
Certainly. Mrs. Arroyo? Ms. Friedel? Mr. Goodwin? Mrs. Matlack?
Here.
Mrs. Neary?
Here.
Mr. Abadia?
Here.
Mrs. Schultz?
Here.
Mrs. Tom?
Here.
Okay. Mrs. Seidel?
Here. Sorry, I lost my connection there for a minute. Our first order of business will be approval of minutes. I would like to make a motion for approval of minutes, special meeting, board retreat minutes, and executive session minutes dated October 12th, 2020. Approval of minutes, board work session, special action meeting minutes, and executive session minutes dated October 13th, 2020. And approval of minutes, regular meeting minutes, and executive session minutes dated October 27th, 2020. Mrs. Neary, could I have a second?
I second.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Sugars?
Okay, I will open up the voting for online voting. Board members, you may cast your votes. And we have a unanimous vote.
Great, thank you. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Malash. We have two presentations tonight, and he's going to introduce our first presenter.
Thank you, Mrs. Seidel. We do have two presentations this evening. The first one, I'm very excited to welcome Mr. Tony Saporito, who's our District Director of Security. Tony's going to be switching into Mrs. Sugar's chair for presentation. As you know, Mr. Saporito joins us every year to provide a presentation on information that we share with the state regarding safety and security. We often refer to it as the Violence and Vandalism Report. Let me just get this queued up so we're ready to go.
Good. Well, good evening, everyone. Board members, Dr. Malash, thank you very much for the time tonight. As Dr. Malash had mentioned, we're going to go over the annual violence and vandalism, weapons and substance use report today, as reported from the 2019-20 school year to the state of New Jersey and the student safety data system, which for anybody that has been around for a little bit knows switched over from what used to be called the electronic vandalism and violence report system. And this system is definitely not as robust as the older one. I remember specifically speaking with Mrs. Matlack about the sub-reports that we used to get that had details as to what happened with the different numbers that we have, but there is no more sub-reports. All we get is a total for each building. And if something has to be looked into further, I have to actually pull the form that was uploaded to the state system in order to get the details for it. But we have a lot of information to go over. And of course, the impact of COVID on these particular reports. Okay, what our impact is first one is obvious. We closed students on the, closed 2 students on the 13th of March of 2020, effectively losing the last 3.5 months of school. With that, only HIBs get reported in the SSDS system off campus. It's the only incident off campus that gets reported still. So no matter where an HIB occurs, if it's between 2 Cherry Hill students, then it's reported. Now, for instance, if there was a fight on a playground between 2 Cherry Hill students, it would not go into the SSDS, it would just be handled by the police if they had to take a report. So that is that's the only thing that would be getting inputted after that date. As we've known in the past years, this is a report that's required to be given to the Board of Education every year. The categories that you see are violence, vandalism, weapons, substance, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, and of course, HIB alleged. They are the main categories. They are the numbers that are reported to the state and that they report back to us with the final year report. The actual report is broken down into 2 parts, or I should say periods. Period 1 is from the start of the school year until December 31st, of whatever year it is. This would be 2019. And then the part 2 would be January 1st of 2020 till the end of the school year, whenever that is, whenever the last student is gone from our learning or our education. Of course, the numbers are going to be down because of COVID. And these, just as for review, for members that may not have been here before or may have been familiar with the other system, back before the 17-18 or 2017-18 school year started, the HIB alleged category was added. There were changes in the vandalism category where burglary was removed, fireworks removed, and computer trespass was added. Now, if you look at that, this is a report that's specifically for when students are on campus. So a burglary to happen while students are on campus is basically impossible because the elements of the crime, burglary, involve a locked property when no one's there. So they removed it from the category there. Fireworks, same thing. They got, if something would involve a firework during the school day, it would get put into a different category. And the computer trespass was added because of the amount of technology that are in school buildings now. And we actually had one this year. We had one reported computer trespass where somebody used an existing password and got in and sent some unflattering stuff through our system. Incidents combined in the violence category, robbery and extortion are now one category. It's very, very rare for us to have any in that category. Bomb threat, fake bomb, fire alarm offenses were all combined now into one category called public alarm, false public alarm category. And the sex offenses have been broken down into 2 categories, which are sexual assault and sexual contact. So that way they line up with Title II-C, which is the criminal law in New Jersey, and they would parody each other for reporting purposes. And the substance abuse is now in 2 categories. One is use confirmed, where we get a positive test, and the other one is
Use expected, refused exam.
right. And before, if a student was sent out and parents refused to take them for an exam, it would be an automatic confirmed. Now they're breaking that out of the confirmed and putting it into the refusal category, into a separate category. These are the numbers for 1920. You see them at the end there on your right-hand side, considerably lower due to the time that the students were in the buildings. The violence category with the 24 incidents involved mostly assaults and fights. There was 9 assaults, 10 fights. The difference is fights mutually agreed or mutual combatants where students are challenging each other to a fight. And the assault is where one party is unwittingly assaulted by the other, or however, by punching or pushing or whatever kind of action is taken. The rest of the category was made up of threats, and one of them did include a bomb threat. It was a written note saying that the school was going to blow up, and obviously the school did blow up, and it was not considered a credible threat from the beginning. The vandalism category was just a couple of damaged stuff in a classroom and one computer trespass, which goes under that category. Weapons, we only had one, and again, fortunate as we have in past years, was possession of a knife. It was left in a book bag, not used, not intimated in any crime, left in a book bag. One of the students thought it was neat to show it to somebody else. One of the teachers seen it, and that was the one incident there in the weapons category. HIB confirmed 31 speaks for itself. Substance use, I'm sorry, under the substance abuse category, so 9 low for our time there. And sorry, the next one after the HIB alleged. HIB alleged was 31 for, I'm sorry, HIB confirmed with 31. HIB alleged is 253, I'm sorry, for 1920. You see the past numbers for the HIB. They're 71, 80, 96, and 31 was going to be lower across the year. Kids not being in school. HIB alleged category is newer. It's the third full year. And you see as those numbers went down from 17, 18 to 18, 19, that's when we implemented, and John, I apologize, I always forget the name of it. Stop it. And it's and the principals of the buildings are given discretion. I want to word it right.
There's a threat assessment form that is used to make a determination of whether investigation needs to be done, if it will meet at face value the criteria to be determined as an HIB.
And that came in between before the 18-19 school year. So that's the number drop there for those who've seen this for the first time. And what's driving it? I think we have the fantastic training and implementation of our HIB strategy here. Training sponsored by NJDOA, provided by the school district, and anti-bullying rights laws. Behaviors, required reporting, and procedures for HIB. And I think just the gathering of all that data and the years that we've had to absorb all this, it has just been making our HIB program that much better when we have to investigate. The district developed the protocols for HIB reporting criteria. That's what Dr. Malash was just speaking of, and different presentations and programs that we present to the students and staff during Week of Respect, and really during the entire school year. How we the children here, the students here are taught, and I think we just do a fantastic job with this Weddington, with her staff there, who was leaning on them, trying to make sure we're getting all the reports right, the training's right. Since we're required to report to the state, we'd like to be as accurate as possible. So I thank her and her staff for the help they give me on that. What have we been doing over the years, and what have we been doing over the past, since the last time we met, I guess was October. Of course, character education, always a staple. Cultural proficiency, Mr. Guy and Dr. Chapman, all of the campus police officers go through that training, and it just, the wealth of knowledge that those gentlemen have is just astounding. Mandatory review of the district's crisis management plan. It is mandatory. It's set down by the Department of Education's Office of School Preparedness and Emergency Planning. We have to make sure we have our 91 points taken care of, 91 topics taken care of and addressed. And that was recently reviewed by Jeff Gale, who's the director, and we do meet that 91 criteria. We have campus visits by CHPD daily to supplement the campus police. And this is one of the more important ones on here, the mandatory training for the campus police officers. Over the years since we expanded the department 3 years ago, they have gone through de-escalation training, SRO certification, which 4 of us, I actually had to go through it also, 4 of us went through this summer. Cultural proficiency in service training programs with CHPD twice a year. And we just got something new. I thought it was interesting and very, very applicable. It just came from the State Attorney General's office that all law enforcement agencies have to go through this training of, it's called Handle with Care. And it is how to deal with victims, any victims, no matter what age, but especially children, victims of crime or victims of some sort of traumatic incident that happens. And the campus police are going through that training right now as we speak, along with every other department that in the state of New Jersey. Also on some of that training, there's a couple of little tidbits that are interesting that I think you should know. Joe Baldessare, who is one of our campus officers at West, is a certified special ed teacher and also a general education certified. And the training that the campus police have that they brought with them from their other agencies is extremely extensive, and they continue to be trained on any relevant topic. Our school safety specialist training, myself and Ms. Sugars are the school safety specialists. We are certified by the Department of Education in 2018. Since the 2 years since then, we are required to have 10 hours of in-service training, which we have completed. Way more than 10 hours, that's for sure. And our staff student photos and IDs that Mr. Bart's working on now with the swipe cards in different buildings is well underway. Our newest addition to our security plan is the development of the Cherry Hill Public Schools Behavioral Threat Assessment Data Collection Program with our reports that are the S12 reports that are submitted to myself, the nurse, and where else they go. Those reports are building based, and it's very hard to follow anybody that could be perceived as a threat or could have behavior that could be interdicted and helped. So this new commercial software that we have is going to help put everything in one spot so that all the SACs, everybody can see it that needs to see it. And that way, if there can be any help given to any of the students that could possibly be a threat to themselves or others, we'd be able to get the jump on it and to intervene and to stop anything that could happen that could be terrible. Our memorandum of agreement with the Cherry Hill Police Department and Camden County Prosecutor's Office is mandatory from the State Attorney General. We signed off on that. We usually have a training that goes along with it, but this year, of course, we didn't have that. I have, and the campus police have access to Cherry Hill Police Records Management, computer-aided dispatch program, and instant communication by radio at any time the campus police are in the buildings with students. We have Megan's Law notification that we do to notify the principals of any Megan Law offender that is around the area, and then there is a specific procedure that they have to do to notify staff. We can, of course, conduct our monthly security drills and fire drills as on a webinar today for December's drill, which will be coming up in the month of December if we have students and staff in the building, if we have staff in the building. And it has not been suspended for this year, even though a lot of districts are fully remote. Districts are hybrid, and then remote. It doesn't make any difference. If there are staff in the building or students in the building, you have to continue doing your drill program, and we have done that for the first 3 months that we've been here since we've had staff in the building. Alarm codes for the buildings are maintained by myself. The passive alcohol sensor program at the high school level for any dance or public event. Of course, haven't had any in a while, but that is there when they have those events. And the health education curriculum, the dangers to drug, alcohol, internet safety, cyberbullying. That's not only done by the building level staff, it's also done by the police department, Cherry Hill Police, it's done by Cherry Hill Fire Department, and also campus police. Of course, we have our common sense stuff, the district-wide protocol for all exterior and classroom doors remain locked at all times in the locked position. Something else new that we just got done over the summer, Alyssa's Law compliance is completed, which is direct 911 access to the police department through the activation of a button. The expansion of the swipe card entry system, which we talked about earlier under the student and staff photos. Lockdown buttons and security cameras have been expanded. Stop the Bleed program, we reported last year that we were just in the beginning of it. It has now been implemented. We purchased 50 Stop the Bleed kits initially, sent them out around the district, and the University Hospital Newark and the state DOE then gave us 50 more from grant money that they got. So we're deploying them now. It's very simple. It's just in case there's a major wound that has to be fixed with anything more than a Band-Aid. And they're very simple kits. We'll be getting them around the district and hopefully never be needed. New visitor tags, we implemented that last year over the summer. The yellow tags to show, stick out, so people walking around the buildings are supposed to be outside of their outer garment so we can identify them immediately. Command system training, incident command system training for long involved incidents between CHFD, CHPD, myself, and the campus police involvement through that training. We are mandated by the Camden County Prosecutor's Office, who's mandated by the State Attorney General's Office to have an internal affairs function, which we do have. And a resiliency program is also mandated by the State Attorney General's Office within each police department in case there is an officer who's having some sort of issue themselves. They can go to that trained officer, and that's Joe Baldessari, our resiliency officer. And of course, none of this is possible without the stakeholders you see up there, the Board of Ed, parents and students, teachers, staff, our administrators, especially the principals that I work with every day, fantastic people, our PTAs, campus police and security staff, of course, the township entities, the police department, fire EMS, and the community. And none of this is possible without them. If anybody has any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer them. If I don't have them right here, I'll be more than glad to look for them and get it to Dr. Walsh.
So Mrs. Seidel, Mrs. Neer.
Mrs. Seidel?
Hi, Mr. Saporito. Thank you very much for that presentation. I have two quick questions.
Sure.
I know that we don't have a full year's worth of data. However, based on the numbers you were seeing before we went remote, were the numbers trending up or down? If we didn't move to remote, were you anticipating that our bottom line number would be up or down for incidents this current year?
I'm not 100% sure, but I can certainly check. What I'll do is I'll go back the last couple of years and try to get it to where we were at in previous years in the middle of March and get those numbers. And then that way I can give you an idea of which way they were trending.
Okay, I mean, just eyeballing it, it looks to me like we were down overall, but that's very unscientific. So I just was curious if you had any thoughts on it. And then my second question is regarding the substance abuse category. I know in the past couple of years, sure, thank you. In the past couple of years, vaping is the biggest driver of that category. Was that still the case for this past year?
Sorry, I didn't hear what category.
At least we didn't, you broke up a little bit on what the category, what the driver was for it.
Vaping.
Sorry,
Oh,
are you able to
vaping.
hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I said in past years, under the substance abuse category, we've seen an increase in vaping contributing to that category. I was just wondering if that was the same case for this past year.
I think there was 9 incidents under that substance, which is where that would go into. Now, vaping really would fall into 2 categories. It's all according to what is being vaped. If it is some sort of tobacco product that would normally be legal for anybody that is of age, that would just be a violation of the district policy, the tobacco policy. But if it is some sort of either cannabis oil or some sort of CBD or marijuana itself, that would be in that abuse category, that substance use category. I'm not 100% sure exactly how many were involved vaping, but I know there was at least a couple because I had to turn a couple over to the police department.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think Mrs. Neary had her hand up as
Mrs. Neary?
well.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for that report, Mr. Saporito.
Welcome.
I had just a couple questions. You mentioned that data collection program and specifically the S12 reporting.
Mhm.
So I guess some of my questions would be, one, who has access to that report and that data? What data specifically are we retaining in that program? And then, who do we report that information back to? Because I think about this in terms of minors and being sure we are careful with that information and that we're not logging some type of, reporting or profiling on these students, right? So I didn't know if you could give a little more information on that.
Absolutely. Mr. Plavinsky right now is working on the program with the vendor, and it is a completely set, and Mark's going to have to chime in on some of this. I think it's a completely separate server. It's only the information that is gathered on the S12 report. Access would be at the discretion of the superintendent, which I can't imagine would be any more than myself, the superintendent, and the SACs in the different buildings since they're inputting. And it can also be whatever security measures are in place for any sort of outside intrusion. But it's not, it's more of a data collection to make sure that certain points are being hit by any sort of a group or an individual student that be able to get them the help that they need. Because there's possibility that something can happen at the elementary level, move on to the middle school level and the high school level, and it really not get passed on with them. And we don't really know what's happening, what the background is before then, unless you're really, really dug deep into the S12s themselves without it being right there at some central place.
Is this consistent amongst school districts that they do this type of reporting?
A lot of them have different commercial ones. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Mrs. Arroyo?
Yeah, thank you. I just have a couple questions. In terms, do you have a breakdown of race ethnicity for any of the situations or the incidences that were reported, or like a breakdown of what schools, or is that part of that subset that you said that hasn't been created yet?
We have the numbers by category from each school.
Did you hear me? Oh.
We have the numbers by category, by main category from each school. As for anything further breakdown, we do not have that. That was one of the subcategories that they have not developed.
And
Mrs. Arroyo, we lost the sound on you.
or anyone that's implementing it that now has to, it's not going to be implemented to its true model where it's originated in 2 of the districts here, actually in Camden County, that do that work. because there are unintended consequences or implications of that work if it's not actually like done in the specific way it's designed. So I'd like just as you guys go through the training, to have some updates on that if possible. And if you could share exactly what that looks like, because it's also just so that everybody's aware of what the types of notices and notifications that the relationship between community members, school, and the campus police or the district police department is going to be sharing or not sharing, so that everybody's aware of how that actually works.
I'm not 100% sure what the beginning was all. Wasn't here.
What was the other question? What's entailed in the de-escalation training?
I don't even know where to start.
Lisa, it was really hard
Is it?
for the first half of Rosie. I don't know if Rosie can even hear us, but we couldn't.
Can you hear me now?
You're just breaking up.
Breaking up.
Really breaking up really bad, Rosie.
But your question was about
I could hear
de-escalation
you.
training.
Can you guys hear me? I know one part of her question that I did hear was if you could talk about the de-escalation training. I did catch that, Mr. Saporito, if you could address that
I
question.
think de-escalation training is the active. Yeah, Lisa and Rosie, however you're coming through, it's very slurred and it's not very even. It's hard. But I think de-escalation is something we would like Mr. Saporito to do.
Sure. What part of it? What part of the?
That much.
Just, I guess, like how long?
Well, there was training provided by what it's called the CLEAR. It's an acronym, CLEAR, and it's from the state. It was mandated, I guess it was probably 2 years ago, that everybody had to go to it. They had to physically go to it. And it was I think it was a full day course on the different methods, not only identifying but the children with special needs that may be perceived wrongly, how to talk to them, how to, I don't think there was any physical training on any physical way to do that. We do that here, but the campus police really don't get involved in that here. That's left to the training for the staff that are trained for that. This is more for identification and just to talk through how they can support an incident like that. And I really didn't hear what Mrs. Arroyo was talking about, the first thing that she was asking about.
I'll email a question and then we can follow up with that if I keep breaking up.
No, absolutely, be glad to. Who else? Mr. Gould.
A couple questions. First, for that Stop the Bleeding program, that sounds like a really good, it sounds like a great program. I'm just curious, are there people or staff that are designated, trained? Is it just the nurse that's doing that, or how? Are there other trained staff that can use those kits?
The kits, yeah, to answer the first part of the question, yes, the nurses are trained. They went through the training. I went through the training. The kits are made to be used by untrained people. Basically what it is blood clotting solution called Quick Clot, a big bandage, and a lot of tape. All it is to do with the studies that the university hospital did, regular shooting victims, that almost 90%, except for the instant fatal shots, you can at least get somebody to an emergency room if you stop the flow of the bleeding. Looked at some of the bigger school shootings. I think Columbine was probably the biggest one because it was still a different response then. It wasn't go in and chase the shooter. It was surround, wait for the SWAT team to go in. And many kids and staff bled to death in that school because nobody knew how to use that. And even if they did, they didn't have the proper equipment.
So I guess back to my first question. So is it only the nurse, or are there other people in the buildings that will be trained on this?
I don't know if the nurses have trained other people on it. The university hospital is offering to anybody that we want to sign up for it. The problem is the classes fill instantly. So I can do some training here for my own, for our own, from me to whoever, and the nurses can expand it if that's something that we want to do.
Yeah, it would make, at least from my perspective, if you have that kid, it would be make sense if, you know, people want to volunteer at the different schools to at least give them some kind of training should they ever have to use it. Hopefully it wouldn't be something as dramatic as a shooting, but you never know what might happen. So.
Yeah, we were talking about like wood shop and the different shops in the high schools to make sure that they know that they're trained up on it. We'll be more than glad to do that.
Yeah, that would be great. And my other question is kind of a follow-up on Mrs. Arroyo's question on the de-escalation training.
Yeah.
So one of my questions, the first thing that came to my mind, I'm assuming, but I don't want to make assumptions, that training also include how the officers interact with kids of color that are in the class, like Black and Latino students. I mean, is that part of all the training?
Yes. Like I said, I think it was a full day, and I have to go back and pull the training records, but I'll see if there was some sort of syllabus or course content on there. I can get back to you to see exactly what was taught, the contents of it.
Right. And I know that all the officers have been a part of the cultural proficiency as well. I'm assuming that they will also be part of any things that develops along with anti-racism as well. Is that a true statement or a plan?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Neer.
One other quick question regarding the training, and you had mentioned with students with special need, was there specific training around that? Specifically working with children on the spectrum, or is that just broadly covered under the de-escalation training?
It was under the de-escalation, and I'm pretty sure there was another 4-hour block of instruction on that. And that was done through Cherry Hill Police, through their in-service training program. Because that was a mandatory training, I think 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, with the prosecutor's office. So that was handled by Cherry Hill Police, since they had to do it also. We just went in with them during their training.
Do they do that annually, or is that just?
I don't think they do it annually, but they certainly do it periodically. I'm not 100% sure how long. I can check with the training lieutenant over there and ask.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Tom?
Yeah, okay, good. I'm on that mute. I'm trying to find out the stop the bleeding. The kit that you mentioned, is that the tourniquet kit or is it a modified tourniquet kit?
No, there's a tourniquet in the kit, yes.
It is a tourniquet kit. Okay, thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So Mr. Secretary, thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
Also for taking a look at a lot of the factors that lead into it educationally. You know, I always have to take a little bit of a beat to say, well, we're talking about schools. So we teach people at schools, you know, we do things like that. So I think the time factor is interesting. I mean, actually on the raw data side, you know, for losing, let's say, a third of the year of in-person instruction, the numbers are dramatically lower, especially considering a lot of the numbers really peaked the year before. So thinking about, like, is there a time factor, you know, maybe around graduation and prom is a huge uptick in violence. It's possible, but I think that's worthwhile. I think thinking about, so there's a building level mitigation on the HIB side that's now allowed. When I look at these numbers, it looks like that is somewhat effective in terms of reducing the alleged but not confirmed cases of HIV, which go down dramatically in 2 years.
Agreed.
And then I think the third thing, just listening to my colleagues that are making really good points, I think given where we are in studying the the populations and sort of adverse effects on populations, I think the system itself may not categorize the kids in a way that would benefit us, but it may be worth looking back at, let's say, the 69-ish incidents of the year and saying, look, populations of color, special needs, ELL, our normal kind of designations, are there populations for which they're represented here much more than their representation in the overall population. So I think that is worthwhile. I think we're going to dig into that maybe in P&L, but I think it's definitely a worthwhile thing, at least to do for this past year.
I'd be glad to. It will take a little bit of time because it's hand checking each and getting the data from that form. So it's not going to a terrible amount of time, but it's not like a computer program where you're able to hit a button and you get the report. So it will take a little time, but it's no problem. I'll be glad to do that.
Great. Yeah, thank you again, and appreciate it.
Welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Saporito?
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. It's good to see everybody again.
Thank you.
Saporito.
I'll give Mr. Rivers back the seat.
And again, a special thank you to Mr. Saporito for the work that he does and the 9 members of Cherry Hill Police Department, Cherry Hill Campus, School District Campus Police Department, and the work that they do within the district, central members of our educational community.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Seidel, you okay if we transition right into Mrs. Wilson?
Absolutely.
Take care, Mr.
So the next presentation that we have this evening is Mrs. Barbara Wilson, who's our Public Information Officer. During the course of the last year, we had done a State of the District presentation a few years ago and a booklet, and then we reintroduced it again last fall and have committed to doing it every year. Now, this has certainly been a unique year to do it for the second year in a row. But I've asked Mrs. Wilson to do an initial presentation to the board and to the community on the State of the District publication, and then the publication will subsequently come out soon. For those that are watching as well, and for the board, Mr. Saporito's presentation will be posted on the website probably by tomorrow afternoon. Again, we have a kind of a strange schedule tomorrow. It's an early dismissal day for staff. So if it's not up tomorrow afternoon, it'll be up on Monday for sure. Mrs. Wilson, I see you there. Let me just make sure I have the presentation ready to go here. It's
Okay, good evening. It's my pleasure to be here presenting, as Dr. Malaj said, for the second year in a row, the State of the District. It certainly is a different time this year than it was last year in dealing with COVID-19, but we have some good information, interesting information to share this evening with all of you. So as I believe most of you know, we are the 11th largest district in the state of New Jersey. We have 19 schools, of course. Our pre-K and early childhood center, the Barclay Early Childhood Education Center. We have 12 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, 3 high schools, and as of last month, 10,626 students and approximately 6,600 families. We are a diverse district. This is the ethnic breakdown taken from last month, October 2020. Interestingly enough, compared to last year, our numbers are very close. Our white population has gone down by 1% to 56%. Asian population remains steady at 17%, Our Hispanic population also remains the same at 13%. Same for our Black population at 8%. And then our multiracial population has gained 1 percentage point. They come in at 5% of our students. Our native languages spoken by students numbers 70 now. Last year we had 69 native languages, so we've added 1. And our number of bilingual students for this school year is up by 175 students. We now have 2,458 bilingual students, and we have 416 English language learner or ELL students, and that number is the same as it was last year. We are academic achievers. We're holding steady at our graduation rate for the class of 2020 as a district at 95%. The state is also holding steady. They remain at 91%. Our 2019 average SAT score, and I'll note that this is not necessarily the class of 2020. We have a fair number of younger students who take the SAT every year as well, but our numbers are up. In district, in reading and writing, our average score is 593. That's up by 17 points from the previous year. Our math score is at 609. That's up by 31 points. The state statistics in reading and writing are at 539. That is up by only 3 points. And the state math numbers are at 541. That's up 2 points from last year. We have the same number of AP courses offered at 21. And our national merit recognition for the class of 2020 put us at 4 semifinalists compared to 10 last year. We have 29 commended students, and that's down by 12. Last year we had 41. But I will say with those numbers, each year the cutoff scores vary from the College Board. And I don't know, I would assume some of you are aware of this, that the scores also differ state by state. Generally, New Jersey and Massachusetts require the highest scores to qualify for semifinalists and commended students. And we distinguish ourselves as a national district of character. And I, just as an aside, I decided to use this photo this year since we put Wesley and Crimson in their masks for COVID-19 and did a little photo shoot a couple of months ago with them. So this was one of their pictures in front of our banner for our National District of Character designation. And we now number 16 schools that have received the National School of Character designation. Our newest schools are listed at the top: the Barclay School, Cherry Hill High School West, Horace Mann, and Thomas Paine all achieved that very prestigious designation this year. Points of pride in our schools, of course, full day kindergarten, which we had just launched last year when I did the State of the District last November. So we've just passed our 1-year anniversary of full day kindergarten. Of course, that program looks quite a bit different in a virtual format, but our program is thriving nevertheless. Another point of pride in our schools is our partnership with the Book Smiles program. This provides books for free, especially to Title I schools. And this program has done very well in many of our schools, including a book vending machine, which provides free books to our students at James Johnson Elementary, and drop-off boxes that are set up outside of Cherry Hill High School East and Cherry Hill High School West for convenience for people to donate their gently used children's books. Also this year, the Barclay Early Childhood Center's picture encoded communication system was launched. All of their staff were trained in how to do that, and it allows for student voice from our youngest students. There's also been a great commitment to virtual outreach, including STEM nights, club meetings, and performances in the arts, even virtually. I know that Cherry Hill High School West is rehearsing right now to put on We Will Rock You, which was supposed to be their spring musical in person last year. They'll be doing that virtually, I believe, in January. But that's a huge undertaking compared to putting it on stage. And then, of course, throughout the schools, we have our student voice initiatives at all grade levels. And points of pride at the district level. Top of mind is the strategic planning work and our district goals. That's been led and moderated by Mrs. Judy Wilson. And we have a large contingent of folks who worked on that. There's been a great deal of discussion at previous board meetings about that and what we'll be doing moving forward. We've also been able this year to execute the change to online learning in a matter of days when we had to pivot, as we say, to that in March. And we've been refining our students' learning experience on a daily basis since we had to move to remote last March. We also have at the district level continued progress in cultural proficiency, equity, and character education. Among the specifics there are our African American Studies high school graduation requirement, which Dr. Mahan is heading up and as we know is on track to launch in September of 2021. So we're very excited about that, as well as the social justice high school elective and the anti-racism policy. Also, student town hall and community town hall meetings continue. The student town hall has been a tradition for several years. Dr. Malaj holds those meetings with all middle school and all high school students at least 3 times a year. And we've added community town hall meetings this year, just had the one that finished up last week, and we'll be doing another one in December. And with all of those elements, I did want to mention that we did have a celebration last week of Dr. Malaj earning the 2021 State Superintendent of the Year designation from the New Jersey Association of School Administrators. And that's largely from the work that he's been able to accomplish in student voice with this African American Studies work. So that's something certainly of note that is very positive for our district. We've also been continuing our pursuit of fair funding and broadening our communication tools. Among one of the newest items that we've introduced this year is Thought Exchange. We've had great community response to that. It allows community voice to come forward. Not only our students, our staff, our parents, but community members can get on and really talk out issues. We can see differences in the community. We can see where we're reaching consensus, and it really helps inform decisions that we make moving forward. Also, new in communications, I'm putting it in the communications category anyway this year, is the Heart of the District Award. The first Heart of the District, if you'll recall, was awarded to one of our community members, Mr. Joel Fleischer, who is a retiree and a longtime volunteer in a kindergarten classroom at Clara Barton Elementary. We got a great deal of good press from that award and from Mr. Fleischer's work in the school community. And it was my privilege to be able to tell that story and get it out to the news media. And as a result, we won a New Jersey School PR Award in the Media Relations and Human Interest category, second place this year for that state award. So that's also of note for things that have been happening in the district. And then moving on to our budget, I've included the budget fast facts graphic that Mrs. Sugars worked on when she presented our budget earlier this year. You can see our regular education takes up 37% of our total capital outlay. We have special education at 12%, excuse me. Student services at 10%, administration at 9%, then 8% facilities and security, 8% transportation, our total capital outlay at 4%, extra and extracurricular activities and athletics at 2%, basic skills and bilingual services at 2%, instruction and media at 2%, out of district tuition 6%, and instructional programs not really registering and listed at 0% on that graphic. And for our capital reserve projects for 2020, 2021, we have safety and security. Among the specifics there are district-wide cameras and district-wide swipe card access. Also ADA compliance, some of the specifics under that are accessibility and site improvements at High School West and Woodcrest Elementary, And our capital outlay projects for 2020, 2021 include flooring, asbestos removal at various locations, East classroom refurbishment, including the wall project. We have paving, athletic field upgrades, fencing, and HVAC replacements. And then getting back to our students, looking at our graduates from the class of 2020 who certainly had an unusual graduation last year and an unusual start to their next ventures after graduation. We have a list just of the various colleges and universities that class are attending right now, whether in person or not. Camden County College, Drexel, Duke, Harvard, Montclair, New York University, Penn State, Rowan at Burlington County, Rowan University, Rutgers, Stockton, College of William and Mary, College of New Jersey, University of Delaware, Michigan, UPenn, University of South Carolina, University of Tampa, University of Wisconsin, Towson, West Virginia, and Yale. And those are obviously not all of the schools, but a good sampling of where our students attended this fall. And then in closing, I just like to put a reminder of our mission statement. We shall provide all children with an education that develops open-minded thinkers with the strong academic and interpersonal skills to thrive in an ever-changing world and make it a better place for all. And just a reminder of why we all do this work, whether it's those of us in administration, on staff, or on the board, are all these students and their wonderful achievements as they go through our schools. And that is the summary of the state of the district, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Mrs. Wilson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. And I brought in, Mrs. Wilson referred to the second place award for the Heart of the District. If you remember, we were recognized last year. This is the second year in a row with Mrs. Wilson's work that we've submitted to New Jersey School of Public Relations Association, and they highlighted the Heart of the District presentation that was done. So thank you to Barbara for her work. We are looking forward to the publication coming out. We will have some paper copies. We always distribute those through the library. We go through the realtors in town, and then we also post it electronically. We encourage people to look at it electronically on the website, but can always produce paper copies as well. And that'll be out soon. As soon as it's ready, we'll get it out to the board so you can see it. All right, thank you, Mrs. Wilson.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you very much. So next, that brings us into correspondence, and I have just a few things to share, and then I'll see if any of my colleagues have correspondence to share with the rest of the board. First, as Mrs. Wilson said, I want to offer a very big congratulations to Dr. Malash on his 2021 New Jersey Association of School Administrators State Superintendent of the Year. Congratulations on a well-deserved honor. So Mrs. Wilson beat me to the punch on that one, but congratulations. I also want to offer congratulations because the school board election results were certified last week on Friday, November 20th. And the following candidates were elected to serve 3-year terms on the Board of Education. Miriam Stern received 23,017 votes, representing 24.59% of the votes. Carol Matlack received 21,284 votes, representing 22.74% of the votes. And Corinne Elmore Stratton received 18,240 votes, representing 19.49% of the total votes. Congratulations on your election to Cherry Hill Board of Education. New board members will be sworn in on January 5th at 7 p.m. And I also want to thank Mr. John Papica and Dr. Asselhan Kakmak for their candidacy and their run for Board of Education. And then last but not least, I just wanted to say that Mrs. Neary and I had an opportunity to represent the board in the virtual town hall meeting that was held on Monday, November 16th from 7 to 8:30. At its peak, we had over 1,500 participants, so we're thrilled that so many people were able to tune in and join us. And please mark your calendars, because the next virtual town hall is scheduled for December 14th, 2020, and more details will be coming on that in the near future. And that is what I had to share this evening. Does anybody have correspondence to share? I do not see any hands. I can't see Ms. Schultz or Mr. Avadia.
Nobody in the room, Mrs. Seidel. I don't see any hands either.
Okay, thank you. So then that brings us into our student representative reports, and I'm excited that we have representatives that are joining us via Zoom tonight. And I think tonight we're going to start with High School East, and I believe we
Hi.
Aubrey, can you hear us, Aubrey?
Yeah.
Perfect. Oh, there you are. Nice.
Thanks for
Took me a
joining
minute
us.
to find you on the screen. And this is Ms. Seidel. Remember, this is our first night with our high school board reps actually on screen in person doing their presentations. Here we are in the end of November. So welcome to Aubrey Demerjian and to Alex Turley from High School West. I believe that Naomi and Nathan are probably on the outside watching as well. So this is your debut. So Aubrey, you're going to read your report.
To begin a report, we were starting with the hybrid learning plan, which was instated recently. So the hybrid learning plan began last week, which many students at East chose to opt out of. At East, a majority of the student body chose to go all remote, leaving a lot of classrooms close to empty. The hallways have been sectioned off with cones in the middle to allow for navigation of traffic, and up and down staircase rules have been strictly enforced. Study hall has been moved to the library instead of the library annex to allow students to be separated by specific tables more promptly than in the annex with the crowds. Each classroom has been provided a container of disinfectant wipes and hand sanitizer to clean off the working spaces and sanitize after entering and exiting the room. Although many hybrid students complained about the efficiency and the purpose of being in person when a substantial group isn't present to work together, given that a lot of students have gone home, some have also questioned the productivity of the classrooms when teachers are expected to work with students online, on remote, and also pay the same attention to students like physically in the classroom. So that's been a question about some of the students have posed. And then also the remote and hybrid students have expressed a dislike on the new schedule, which does not include a lunch period. For the next topic, we are discussing the blood drive, which East had last week. So East had their 2020 blood drive last week in the DeBart gym instead of which allowed for a lot of space, and they enforced social distancing throughout and separated each of the waiting chairs with more than 6 feet at least, and same with the tables to give blood. And there were prepackaged snacks that they gave out instead of the typical years in the past where they had like big pasta dishes and things like that. They made sure that all the foods and all the drinks were prepackaged and like allowed for sanitation and no cross-touching of anything. Overall, there was a large turnout to the blood drive, which was really good. And in spite of like COVID, there was a lot of turnout, which really helped. And even some Cherry Hill East alumni came back to donate too. As for athletics, a lot of the fall sports seasons have come to a close, but many came and went and competed in playoffs. The boys soccer team proceeded to go all the way to the Group 4 sectional championship against Shawnee, which was very impressive and everyone was very excited about that. Many of the fall sports teams decided to postpone their end of the season banquets due to COVID, so those are possibly going to happen in the spring or other times where it's more prompt and like reasonable to have outdoor dining to allow for social distancing for these banquets since the weather right now is very cold. Winter sports have been postponed and to begin in January, February, March, depending sport to sport when their start date is. So those are being delayed as of right now. And as we look forward to potential sports in the future, it's important to enforce regulation at the games rather than just limiting the amount of people that can come to the games, because we've noticed that at certain games, including some of the soccer games. While the attendance has been limited, there have been various points where crowds have formed, everyone's like run onto the field and things like that. So it's important to make sure that we don't violate any of the social distancing protocols while we're at the sporting events. Our next topic are extracurriculars. So many extracurriculars at East are proceeding forward virtually in like many creative ways. Zooms, Google Meets, like interactive activities that they're doing. Some are running like Kahoots and just fun things to do. Instead of a live show, the theater is releasing a pre-recorded show that they'll put on the radio at BroadwayOnDemand.com, where the White Cast will be streaming their show on December 11th and the Red Cast on December 12th. Eastside is emphasizing its online site with upcoming special holiday coverage and is preparing to come out with a December issue that students can access through an online PDF. Competitions at East like DECA, Mock Trial, and Model UN are adapting to online formats as well. East clubs are also working to provide resources during this time despite the circumstances. Cum Laude and Project Success Tutoring are proceeding virtually and continuing to help students as much as they can given virtual ideas and how they're not in person, but they're still moving on with that. And countless of other clubs at East are finding a way to adapt during this pandemic and contribute to the community. And for our second to last topic, student government. So our student government swore in their new officers for the 2021 school year, and they oathed them all into office, which we had some of our alum come in for a virtual meet to swear some of our new officers in. Our 2021 student body president, Daniel Pipersberg, has emphasized that his goal for the year is to give every single student at East a voice, particularly the minorities. SGA has a process of planning a spike ball event, but due to COVID, they unfortunately had to cancel that, and they were going to move forward with an outdoor socially distanced event, but now they're looking at other options to have something else to go on. They're thinking of trying to make more events to bring the school together, but given COVID, it's kind of hard, and they're just waiting for future possible events that they can do then. And our last topic, the full remote learning. So as most of the year began, remote looks more and more likely as COVID cases rise, and it's important to look for the feedback from the first marking period. So the Monday schedule was a major concern amongst a lot of students and teachers, so it's a good change to have the alternate 5 and 6, which has come recently, instead of the 8 class, like full every single course on Monday, which left a lot of the periods really short, and it just didn't seem very efficient to many people. Going remote is definitely more difficult, and students are lacking important resources like printers and students who are struggling with the online format, but it's the best that we can do. And many teachers have been trying to provide PDF versions and like ways that you don't always have to print everything. And some teachers have been printing packets and leaving them at East for students to pick up for those that don't have printers. So that's a way that teachers are helping as well. And as many teachers have been doing, they've been offering multiple ways for students to continue to learn on different formats instead of just strictly leaving it one way in case that's not bonding with the student very well. But overall, that's what we have so far.
Great update. Thank you, Aubrey.
Thanks, Aubrey. And then
Alex? Sorry, Dr.
Hi,
Bosch, go
so
ahead.
I'm Alex. I'll be presenting the West Board report for the November month. So under general news, in this past month, the district reacted quickly to external situations regarding the hybrid opening plan. As the district excitedly prepared its schools for students to return on a hybrid schedule, active cases in Camden County and Camden County being in the orange level made it difficult to continue with this plan. For the 1-week pilot of hybrid instruction, high school students enjoyed the refreshing return to in-person classes. While many students opted to stay home, the integration of in-person and remote teaching went very smoothly. While after this week, students will be returning to full remote instruction, the effort to prepare our schools and students for hybrid is appreciated. Meal distribution. For the past few months, the district has been providing free meals for any students in the district, whether they attend a Cherry Hill school, private school, or are homeschooled. Students and their families are elated to see and take part in the distribution of free meals. Hopefully this will be able to continue for many weeks to come. Athletic news. There was some big news announced this month with the NJSIA announcing the return to play for winter sports. With this news came the announcement that winter athletics will be delayed, with the earliest sport being ice hockey, beginning practice December 14th and starting competition January 4th. This news is a positive step forward as students know that their seasons will not be canceled in entirety. However, they will just be delayed. The affected sports include ice hockey, swimming, wrestling, basketball, bowling, winter track and field, and girls volleyball. Performing arts news. So for instrumental music, the West Band Department has been diligently practicing and bringing the joys of instrumental music to their homes, hopefully not to the dismay of their families and pets. The various ensembles have been rehearsing challenging and intersecting repertoire. Director Mr. Mark has entertained the idea of putting together a digital band after taking into consideration recording capabilities for students and their instruments. We hope to hear more from them soon. Choral music. The West Department is currently producing many wonderful digital choir and virtual performance projects. West Singer students are finalizing their Where We've Been projects, which is representative of their time in quarantine. All choirs are working on digital choir pieces, which will be edited together with High School East and possibly the middle schools to perform a joint digital performance. Theater. West Theater has been rolling steam ahead with the digital rehearsals for our first musical of the season, We Will Rock You by Ben Elton, which is a loosely based jukebox musical with music from Queen that tells the story of a group of bohemians seeking to bring back free exchange of thought, fashion, and live music in a bland monochrome future. We look forward to a wonderful digital performance. Miscellaneous news at West, extracurricular activities at home edition. Clubs at Cherry Hill West are still doing their best to continue meeting and engaging with their returning and new members while at home and virtual. The following activities and many more are still meeting in a digital format: Project Literacy, National Honor Society, African American Cultural Club, Vegan Club, various class governments, Photo Club, West Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Math League, Community Service Club, Men of Note, Chamber Singers, Fermata, Aspects Literacy Magazine, Yearbook Club, and many more. While the format is certainly different, students are still working on keeping the West Way pride. Tutoring. While the form of everything this year has changed, it does not stop our passionate and diligent scholars from sharing their knowledge. NHS is still continuing their tutor service on a digital platform this year. Students can and are encouraged to request help via Google Form. Afterward, they will be connected with an NHS tutor with expertise in the subject area. The tutor and tutee will then arrange meetings for a topic review. Homework Club and Success Centers are being utilized by students so far this year. They provide a structured environment for students to connect with teachers and peer tutors to find success in whatever subject they need. And that is all for the West Report for this month.
So much, Alex. Great job.
Thank you, Aubrey. Thank you, Alex. We're going to move you guys back into the attendee side, okay? So well done. Much appreciated.
Great job. So that moves us into our first public comment period, which is for agenda items that the board will be acting on at this meeting. So public comment was submitted via email. In order for the public comment to be considered, it had to be received by noon today. And then in addition, if you'd like to submit a public comment now for this public comment period, when prompted, click the raise hand button in the bottom bar of the meeting or dial *9 to raise your hand by phone. You'll be called on by name or identified via phone. A prompt will show on your screen asking if you want to unmute. And if you're joining by phone, dial *6 to unmute your phone. When prompted, begin speaking. And at the end of your 3 minutes, you will be muted. Please make sure your name, your address, and the agenda item that your comment is for. Will be a second comment period at the end of the meeting for any topic. Do we have any folks from the public that would like to speak for first public comment session?
I don't see any hands on that side, Mrs. Seidel.
Okay, Dr. Malash, I don't see any hands. Do you?
I said, I don't see any hands. I don't see any raised hands, no. I don't see any
Okay. So I will ask Ms. Sugars if she has any comments that she received via email for the first public comment period.
I do not, Mrs. Seidel.
Okay, does Mrs. Sugars have any comments for first public comment period?
She does not,
Can
Mrs.
you guys
Seidel.
hear me? Okay, thank you. Okay, so then thank you. So Dr. Malash, I'll turn it over to you. That brings the superintendent comments.
Thank you, Mrs. Seidel. So first, I want to thank Mr. Saporito and Mrs. Wilson again for their presentations this evening. I'm really grateful to the time and the effort that they put into preparing that material. And I'll have follow-up from the board probably at the end of next week with some of the questions that you had for Mr. Saporito. We'll share that information back out. The last month with what we've experienced as a school district certainly stands out in a time period of the last 8 months that have been unlike any that any of us have ever experienced in education. There's been an incredible amount of frustration, a lot of emotion, a lot of raw emotion, a lot of disappointment, a lot of excitement, but it's been an incredibly challenging month. We've heard from a lot of parents and a lot of families, had the opportunity to correspond and talk to many staff members. And I understand the frustration that people are experiencing. We're all feeling that. I'll tell you, I feel it on a daily basis, morning, noon, night, in the middle of the night, the frustration with what's taking place. We had what I thought was a very good town hall discussion a week ago on the 16th, that Monday evening. It's the first one that we've done in a virtual format in that way. We've had them in person, many of them through the years, but that's the first virtual one. At the peak, there were about 1,500 people that were on that Zoom meeting. We had some pre-submitted questions. We had some questions that folks asked live during the discussion. We tried to cover as many topics and to round out, as much information as we possibly could. We'll be holding another virtual town hall on Monday, the 14th of December. Information will come out beginning next week about that, reminders about the time and that kind of stuff. But if you're listening tonight or listening to the recording, mark your calendar for Monday, the 14th of December. We'll do our second virtual town hall meeting. We'll also publish dates for the springtime as well. We found that it was certainly beneficial. I know that a lot of people have questions. I encourage you to send your questions. I encourage you to submit your questions. Even in a town hall format, we're not always able to get to every question that's submitted on paper or electronically, or every question that somebody wants to ask. But we do, like I said, try to round out as much as we possibly can. The other thing, and like I said, I know that there are a lot of families experiencing frustration. And I don't really want to rehash all of what's going on in the last couple of weeks, but we were supposed to launch the hybrid model 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, there was a spike in COVID-19 positive cases among children in our community that we were notified of on a Monday afternoon. And when we make a determination about whether or not children can be in school, it's through consultation with the Camden County Department of Health. That's through the program and the structure that is set up through the state of New Jersey. They're the public health experts. They have the information. And when the Department of Health recommended that Monday afternoon that we not bring children into school, is when we made that decision and tried to notify the community and families as quickly as we possibly could. In fact, I believe that in a little less than 2 hours, all of the information went out. And that was devastating for people. There were some children that were crushed. There were families that were crushed. I know that people were planning on that. They were looking forward to that. Nobody wants to have children back in our schools more than I do. I want children to be in our schools every single day. Over the last few years and not good, we've done well with weather. Cherry Hill, typically, we were the last ones ever to call a snow day. because I wanted children to have the opportunity to be here physically in the building. I still believe that and I still feel that. I am not a public health expert. I am not an MD. I am not a physician. We have a lot of MDs and DOs and nurses that live in our community. And I have a lot of people that have reached out, which I'm incredibly grateful for. There's a wide range of advice that comes, you know, and we have to look at, all right, so to whom do we listen? To whom do we take the advice? Where is that guidance? And that's where we fall back to the Department of Health. Dr. Nowako, the Director of Health, came on to our town hall meeting. When we found out the following day that we will be able to, late that day, and then on Wednesday that we would be able to bring children back, is when we made the announcement about starting the hybrid the following week. And again, this roller coaster is brutal. It's brutal on the staff. I know that it's brutal on families that are trying to plan out work schedules and their lives. It's brutal on the children that are expecting to return to school. Unfortunately, that roller coaster is real in terms of what we are looking at and dealing with the COVID-19 cases. Cherry Hill is a large community. We are the largest school district in this part of New Jersey. There are no other school districts that even come close to our size across a K-12 or pre-K-12 spectrum. When we have to make a determination, especially prior to having children here, we have to take all the factors that we have available into consideration and look at what does that impact mean. That's why the decisions have been made. Last Friday, we had an emergency call with the County Director of Health about Camden County being in the high-risk category of being orange. The concern at that time was when the numbers come out, the information comes out tomorrow on the 25th of November, the Camden County will move into the red or very high-risk category. Once we move into that very high-risk category, we have no choice but to close the schools, right? It's part of the matrix that's come down from the New Jersey Department of Health, supported by the Department of Education. Because of the challenges that we've experienced, the reason we made the determination and the decision last Friday is just so that people have the opportunity to prepare. I don't think that it's fair, or it would be fair to, again, to announce on Wednesday evening before the long weekend of, by the way, next week, we're going to be on full remote and people not have a chance to plan, or to make the announcement over the weekend and then people have not have a chance to plan. I understand the frustration that goes with that. Trying to provide for continuity of learning, for the ability for our staff to prepare lessons. And again, our staff members have done such an incredible job over the course of the last 8 months. As we came back into September and looked at the challenges with changing what the expectations were in the full remote program, as they stepped up and prepared lessons that have maintained a continuity of learning, I'm grateful for all that they've done. But I know that full remote learning does not work for every child. I know that it works for some, and I've heard very positive stories from some families, but it does not work for every child. And I know that it's incredibly difficult, especially from our most fragile learners, from children that we know and that we want to have here in our school buildings. And we are continuing to work. We will continue to work with our staff. We'll continue to work with the information from the County Department of Health. And as soon as we can get children, especially those children of most need, into our buildings, we will work to do that. But there are a number of things that go into that process. We want the children to be in school. There's nothing that can replicate the in-school experience for a child to be in a classroom with his peers and with her teacher, and to have that experience. It's an incredible amount of pressure for children to have to learn at home and to be under the watchful eye of a family member or a friend. It's a dramatically different experience for that child. A child who may be used to it at 7 years old or 8 years old or 19 years old, sitting in a classroom with their peers, who can turn their head or look out a window or choose for a moment not to attend or correspond with their peers. When they're at home or in small groups or by themselves and being watched by a family member or an adult, that's a dramatically different experience for them. We want the children to be back in school. We can do it and do it effectively. The other piece that we have is, again, sharing information as quickly as we have it to try to be as transparent as we possibly can. There are challenges that exist with that. This is not a straightforward linear process in which we've been involved at all. We rely on a lot of outside people and a lot of outside places for information. But as we have information, we'll continue to put it out there. We'll continue to be straightforward about what we are doing and where we are going next step-wise. We'll continue to let folks know. And I know that people don't all agree. People have certainly asserted when they don't agree. Through this whole experience, as I talk to my peers throughout the state, throughout neighboring states, it's difficult to satisfy the group as a whole. That just isn't real. People have dramatically different needs. People have dramatically different home situations. The district is trying to do the best they possibly can to provide for all of our children in a way that provides for a continuity of learning and an effective education as we go through. And it will continue to work and it will continue to grow. If your child is struggling, if your child is not attending, if your child is unable to do work, if your child just cannot meet those needs, please reach out to the school, contact the classroom teacher. The best source of initial information is always the classroom teacher. Talk to the counselor in the school, talk to the principal. If it's a secondary school, involved an assistant principal. If a child that has an IEP, contact the case manager. Contact People's Services. Reach out, have those discussions. I'm not going to tell you that we're going to have all the fixes. We are not. But we can talk about it and what can we do to work forward and how can we try to address situations as they arise. There is absolutely a plan to return children to school. I would love to return children as soon as we can in a tiered model, as I said, especially for those most fragile learners that we have in the district. But there are things that have to take place for that to happen. We will continue to work. We will continue to communicate with the folks of Cherry Hill, with the families, and we will continue to do the best we possibly can for our children. Mrs. Wilson talked about 6 weeks, a month ago, there's about 10,600 and some children that are in the district. It's a lot of children from a lot of families. We want to make sure that we are meeting their needs, and that's hard. And again, I know that people are frustrated, but please continue to communicate, continue to reach out. You can always contact me. Do my best that I possibly can to respond as quickly as possible. I am not always the best resource to contact. If you contact me about an issue that's going on with your child's classroom, if I'm the first person you contact, it's always going to go back to that school, right? I'm always going to reach out to the principal. We're going to reach out to the counselor. We're going to involve the teacher, because that's the best way to make it better, to try to address it for an individual child. I hope that everybody who takes the opportunity over this long weekend in a socially distanced manner and in a safe manner to relax, to breathe, to refresh, to think about that which you are thankful for, especially this year. I implore our staff and our community members and our family members to please don't travel. Please don't make decisions that you realize may have lasting implications, especially if we're able to get children back in. We all can do something. We all can do something to help mitigate the spread of the disease. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. Does audio sound better for me now? I moved to a different location.
It does.
Much better.
Okay, good. So with that moves us into our action agenda, and I'm going to ask Mrs. Matlack to please move the C&I agenda.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Seidel. The superintendent recommends and I move the following. Number 1, approval of out-of-district student placement for the 2020-2021 school year. Number 2, approval of professional service agreement for this 2020-2021 school year. And number 3, resolution for the award of settlement agreement. Do I have a second? Mr. Goodwin, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board members? Dr. Malash or Mrs. Seidel, can you please let me know? I don't see all of the board members on my screen.
I don't see any, no, I don't see any questions, Mrs. Matlack.
Okay, thank you. Seeing none, then I'll turn it over to Mrs. Sugars for the vote.
Okay, I have opened up the online voting, so board members, you can cast your votes. And we have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to ask Mrs. Schultz to move B and F.
The superintendent recommends and I move the following. Number 1, financial reports. Number 2, resolution appointing an interim assistant qualified purchasing agent. Number 3, resolution. Number 4, NJDOE project application and plan submission for Stockton Elementary School route. And number 5, approval of Cherry Hill McKinney-Vento DCPMT students going out of district for the 2020-2021 school year. Do I have a second? Mr. Avadio, are there any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Okay, again, I am opening up the online voting.
Mrs. Sugars, I need to abstain to Henry Schein and Beata Home Health on the bill list, please. Okay, thank you.
And we have a unanimous vote.
Great, thank you. I will HR agenda. The superintendent recommends and I move the following. Number 1, termination of employment certificated. Number 2, termination of employment non-certificated. Number 3, appointments certificated. Number 4, appointments non-certificated. Number 5, leaves of absence certificated. Number 6, leaves of absence non-certificated. Number 7, assignment salary change non-certificated. Number 8, approval of revised job descriptions. Number 9, ratification of CHASA contract. Number 10, other motions. Can I have a second, please? Mrs. Matlack, any questions?
Oh.
Mrs.
I didn't have a question. I'm sorry. I moved ahead.
Okay.
I needed to say.
I do have a question, and maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing, but was there like a revised agenda or something? Because maybe I missed it for this one.
I'm not sure, Mr. Goodman, is there an item specifically that you're referring to?
Well, item 7 on my agenda says salary change, or maybe I'm reading it. I just didn't see the other, and it looked just different.
Okay.
Oh, I see it now. All right.
So
Never mind.
item number 7, Mr. Goodman, there's a star that's next to that. There are 2 positions that are on there that were not, when the agenda was originally posted on Friday, you can see that it says addendum item. Those were added after the agenda was originally posted on Friday.
Okay. All right. I got you. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, if no other questions, Mrs. Sugars, back to you.
Okay, I am opening up the online voting.
Mrs. Sugars, it's Laurie. I need to abstain from item 16.9 and then just vote for the others, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And other than the exception noted by Mrs. Neary, we have a unanimous vote.
I am going to also move policy and legislation tonight. The superintendent recommends and I move the following. Number 1, approval of harassment, intimidation, bullying, investigation decisions. Number 2, approval of Cherry Hill School's HIB self-assessments and statements of assurances. And number 3, second reading of policy. Do I have a second? Mrs. Any questions?
Who was the second?
I do not see any hands up. Dr. Marsh, do you see any hands that I don't?
We do not, Ms. Seidel.
Okay, Ms. Sugars.
All right, I will open up the online voting.
Mrs. Sugars, I have to abstain from 17-1.
Okay. Okay, other than the item noted by Mrs. Arroyo, we have a unanimous vote.
Okay, great, thank you.
One quick thing, can I, not that it matters that much, but at the beginning of the meeting, I wasn't joined so that I could speak, and I did want to abstain from the minutes on the 10th because I wasn't there, but I'm not sure. I just wanted to make note of that.
From the 13th or the 20th?
From November 10th.
Those will come up next month, Mr. Goodwin.
Oh, I'm sorry. I must have missed that. Okay.
Okay. Okay, Mrs. Sugars, are we ready to move on to strategic planning?
We are.
Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Avadia, who will lead us in our discussion on strategic planning.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Seidel. So last time we met and discussed strategic planning, we talked about a lot of things. And I frankly wondered at the end if I had made it more complicated than it needed to be. We do as a committee want input. We have not as a committee met since we had our last discussion. But here's what I think that we're teeing up and where we would welcome any level of board input, either from committee members or people off of the committee. Next Tuesday, for the first time, we will talk about configuration within the district and how that fits into strategy of educating kids. We've had no discussion like that to this point. Dr. Malash, as our Chief School Administrator and educational expert, will lead us through what I believe will be a macro look at things we can cover over the course of many meetings over a period of time. We will decide nothing at that meeting, except what to bring to the board to further engage in discussion. Things in my mind like education at the elementary school level, a magnet school structure versus neighborhood schools, whether we need 3 high school buildings or 4 or 2. Things that could be shared resources like an auditorium, a huge maker lab, auditorium, special ed structure within the district, ELL magnet schools at the elementary level. All those things are things we could talk about. But I'm going to do everyone the favor of not leading that discussion because I have nothing to bring to the table. That's where we need Dr. Malash to lead us through. If there are things you feel should be at the top of the list, like we have heard from the board to talk about Rosa as a magnet within that middle structure, please do let us know. But there will be opportunity to engage further, deeper later. A week later, Garrison, our architect of record, Bob Garrison, will lead us in a discussion, not of any work that's going to happen, but of the mental models we should look at when we think about taking our existing school buildings and either demolishing them and building them new or refurbishing them as new for a new feel with a significantly lower cost. In order to add depth to that first presentation this round with Garrison, he'll lead us through a high school, a middle school, and an elementary school. Now he's done the work on Carusi. That's why we're doing Carusi. The other reason to do it is that it was one of his questions as he inherited this architecture of record job. He said, hey, a lot of work needs to get done on Carusi. I wonder what it would look like to rehab it versus build it new. And so he'll share some of that with us. The intent of that will be a discussion to ask Garrison directly all the questions that we would have on that issue that is very hot, that's been hot for years, that simply bears an examination. Now, that's not a discussion the committee will lead. I'm not sure exactly who does, but I think Mrs. Seidel will lead that in terms of thinking about getting the board's feedback on Mr. Garrison's presentation. What the committee will do on that same night is talk about what we talked about the week before in terms of configuration items and a roadmap for that full discussion. So that's what strategic planning in my mind is doing in the month of December. In our first meeting in January, we've asked Garrison to come back to us with a suggestion on what a small step bond, a targeted bond might look like if we felt as a board that we must go out to the community before a major bond could be developed, because we know that that major bond, we would be looking at going out to the people who vote within our township. We would look at September 22, with the first major tranche of work being summer of 2023. So we want to look at like, hey, if we looked at something smaller and targeted, what could that look like for an advanced date where we could get some work that we all believed in started sooner? So that's where I believe we're going in the next month and a half. But again, we the purpose of the committee is really to tee things up for the full board to discuss. As a committee, we have no authority to do more than that. So if there's anything people want to add at this juncture to any of those three buckets, I think that the committee would join me in and administration in welcoming feedback along those lines. And hopefully I've done a better job than last time.
Did a good job last time.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vadi. I think you did a great job last time as well. And thank you for the clarification. I know I shared my feedback with you. So I hope I would encourage, as you did, the other board members to do the same in advance of the next strategic planning meeting. Okay. Anyone else? Any other comments? Okay, that takes us into our second public comment. This public comment period can be on any item on the agenda. After we take questions from the people logged in with us tonight, Mrs. Sugars will read any public comments that she received via email. But in order to submit a comment tonight, when prompted, you can click the raise hand button in the bottom bar of the meeting or dial *9 to raise hand by phone. You'll be called on by name or identified via phone number. A prompt will show on your screen asking if you want to unmute. If you're joining by phone, dial *6 to unmute your phone when prompted, and you'll have 3 minutes. After 3 minutes are up, you will be muted. Please make sure you tell us your name and your address. So the first hand I see is from Carolina Bevid.
I was asked to be unmuted. It's Mindy Rosen. Should I speak?
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Mindy Rosen, 6 Fairhaven Court. I have 3 quick questions. The Cali is coming out tomorrow, like you said, tomorrow to you and to the public on Thursday. What will happen if we're not in the red? Second question, I saw that West and Woodcrest are having ADA work done. What else is going to be done to comply with the law and finally become compliant as a district? When are you going to follow the ERI report that cost us thousands of dollars and showed the neglect that we have had in our district over the years? And the third question is, I personally am seeing this mission statement for the first time. I'm sure it's been said many, many times, but I'm seeing this for the first time in writing on a card. And my question is, how does this mission statement represent students with special needs? Those are my 3 questions. Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Mrs. Thank you, Mrs. Rose. Thank you.
Hi, Carolina Bevid.
And I see.
Sorry, you called Carolina Bevid before and I didn't get to.
Hi, there you are. We can hear you. Go ahead, please. That's okay. Please please speak to us now.
Okay, thank you. My name is Carolina Bevitt. I live at 1213 Cropwell Road. First, I'd like to say, Dr. Malash, if you were truly trying to do what was best for all the children in the district, you wouldn't have held off on offering hybrid instruction through the fall and then reintroduced it exactly when it would predictably shut down again. But besides that, a study published on November 12th by the Journal of the American Medical Association recommends that future decisions regarding school closures during the pandemic should consider the association between education disruption and decreased lifespan and give greater weight to the potential outcomes of school closure on our children's health. According to the study, an analytical model estimated missed instruction thus far during 2020 could be associated with an estimated 5.53 million years of life lost for publicly educated elementary school children in the United States. Let me repeat that. Publicly educated school children could collectively lose 5.53 million years of life as a result of school closures. To put it more bluntly, the longer schools remain closed, the shorter our children's lifespans will be. The model predicted a 98.1% probability that schools remaining open, even at the beginning of the pandemic, would have been associated with a lower total years of life lost than school closure. So to put it bluntly again, closing elementary schools is more deadly than opening them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bevan. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
You can?
Yeah, you're just going in and out, Lisa. You're breaking up.
Okay, sorry. I'm out of rooms to move to. But next hand I see is Jamie Goodwin.
Hi, Jamie Goodwin, 112 Mansfield Boulevard South. I just wanted to kind of re-comment on a few things I've mentioned at a few other board meetings. I know a conversation has come up along the conversation of equity and making sure that we really do follow our mission statement, that is, that all students have the opportunity to thrive and actually learn in school. One of the big things that I had mentioned and had some correspondence with is around audio and video practices. I haven't been sort of so in line with whether or not a public letter was sent out to the community members, but I would encourage the board and the superintendent to consider this, because although direct conversation and communication has been with the principals and other staff, unfortunately, if it is not being followed by teachers, students have very little opportunity to actually know that it's incorrectly being implemented. And that is, students of different family backgrounds and home lives may not be able to turn on their audio or their video and should not be penalized socially or academically in class. This is both embarrassing for the student and hinders the ability for them to thrive in school. I also would encourage that we look towards creating equity guidelines, because it's just hard to ask any teacher to think about all the situations of students at home. And the failure to be inclusive to all students during this time is more detrimental than any other time. Students may not have the opportunity to learn, and learning loss is at an all-time high during COVID. So I'd encourage looking for outside people to create equity guidelines, that is, flexible deadlines, no penalty on attendance, and other things of this nature. So I just want to bring that up and encourage the community to definitely send out a public letter so that people can be aware of the guidelines who can't attend board meetings or are not available to go to other community events. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin. Next, Jen Nadio.
Sorry about that. I was looking for my mute. Jen Nadio, Cherry Hill Special Education PTA President, 224 North Madison Avenue. Cherry Hill Special Education PTA created a call to action on Saturday, November 21st, 2020, after many families realized they were going back to remote and their students with 504s and IEPs have been failing and struggling. Families have reportedly contacted several layers of the district, as Cherry Hill Special Ed PTA has requested, and reportedly received no response. We need answers. An individualized education plan, or an IEP, or a 504 was developed for in-person learning in the Cherry Hill School District. Cherry Hill Special Education PTA feels if a family of a student with an IEP or a 504 has not been successful with remote learning, that they can call an IEP or 504 meeting to modify that document as needed to meet the needs of the student during remote learning. After meeting with district administration for the last 2 days, we feel it's even more imperative that our families speak up for their own child's individual needs. We ask the case managers, supervisors, and director of pupil services to recognize this is a very difficult time for our families with those with special needs. We encourage you to think outside the box or explore new strategies for all students to be successful. And at the same time, the Cherry Hill School District has agreed to run reports to identify IEP and 504 students who are currently failing classes or in danger of failing classes to be able to better support them. A concern we also have is that special education teachers have been removed from their classrooms to teach in classrooms where the teacher was on leave. This does not allow for our students to receive their IEP or 504 accommodations or modifications. This is very concerning and needs to be fixed. Cherry Hill Special Ed PTA wants to thank all of our families for reaching out and advocating for their children. It is important that you are heard. And I know I have like a couple more seconds. I wanted to add, please, if you're going to do the African American studies, you have to have an ICR class. It is not fair to our students who need those ICR classes, and you're going to make it another requirement. So if anyone has any questions on that, please feel free to reach out to me. But Giuseppe is here and we're helping our families, and we need the administration to work with us as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Nadio. Next, Megan Aarons.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Megan Aarons. I live at 406 Morris Drive in Cherry Hill. I'd like to first acknowledge Dr. Meloche. Congratulations on your being awarded New Jersey Superintendent of the Year, and also to thank my son's 2 kindergarten teachers at Woodcrest Elementary. Miss Constantino, Miss Redfern are wonderful, and we really appreciate him being in their class. They've really gone above and beyond through this difficult time to reach out to the kids and make sure everything is as good for them as it can be. I do, although, have a few questions about the special education budget and how it's being utilized in the virtual space. According to the budget that was shared on the Cherry Hill Public School website, IDEA funds were cut drastically. These dollars are committed by the federal government. Did the school district adjust the budget to compensate for this deficit? And just so everybody's aware, the deficit was about $462,302 that we are not getting in federal funds for the 2020-2021 school year. Along that same idea or thought process, are we looking into creating contracts with outside service providers who can meet families where they are in the virtual space? In fiscal year 2020-2021, we've committed $5,096,048 to OT, PT, speech, and related services. What services are families actually receiving right now? There is a learning loss, and we have to address it. Families should be able to receive related services and compensatory services from outside service providers if they cannot be adequately addressed by the school district. In my household, that would mean OT services, but for many other families that may look different, and all of our children are entitled to a fair, appropriate public education in accordance with IDEA and the implementation of IEPs and 504s in the virtual space with fidelity. I would appreciate the special education budget to be clearly explained regarding how the monies are spent now that we are planning for more than half of the school year to be remote. How is this budget being allocated in the virtual space versus in a typical environment? How does Cherry Hill Public School plan to adapt budget to meet the individual needs of children with IEPs and 504s? My final question is regarding due process. Exactly how much does Cherry Hill Public School spend annually on due process, mediation, and any other form of litigation? Of that, how many of those cases did Cherry Hill Public School lose? And where can that money be found in your budget? Because I don't see a budget line specifically for that. And I'd be very curious to know the exact dollar amount annually over the past 4 years that's been spent fighting against Cherry Hill families who want to get services that their children are entitled to legally under IDEA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ahrens. Miriam Stern.
Hi, can you hear me?
Not well.
Can you hear me? Not well? Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to go to a room, but the dog will not bark. How about now? Okay,
Yep,
looks
now
like
we
my
can-
captions are coming on, so I guess you can hear me. So first of all, I wanted to, this is Miriam Stern, 121 Ashford Road. Wanted to thank you very much for your kind words, Mrs. Seidel, about being elected to the Board of Education. I'm thrilled and excited and looking forward to serving come January. And I want to congratulate Corinne Elmore Stratton and Carol Matlack for your wins, and enjoyed running with John Papica and Ash Sahan Takmak. I want to address special ed tonight. It's something I talk about quite often. As a family, we have a child with special needs. And I have to just say that I think it's quite inauthentic to speak up about the vulnerable special ed children and vulnerable children in our district when we see things like what happened this past week, and I believe the week before, with teachers who are special ed teachers designated to work with kids with special needs are being pulled to cover general ed classes. This continues to be an issue. I've experienced this myself, actually, with my own child. And I don't know how we can say that we're looking out for the needs of special ed kids when we are not valuing supporting them in school primarily, but instead valuing supporting other kids in school. There has to be a more creative way to handle the absences of teachers. And I'm seeing other districts do this by bringing classes together for study halls, et cetera, or for kids in general ed classes to come together and do their own online virtual learning as they might at home when they're in the hybrid environment. Kids with special needs and families are challenged with so many extra struggles. It is a 24/7 difficulty for many of us, and we need our families and parents and educators to be our allies, not people to fight and put up resistance against our efforts to get our kids what they need. This is certainly an equity issue, and it is more challenging now than it's been in a long time. So I want to thank you for your time and ask you to please recognize that it is time to champion and be allies of families who are struggling with kids with special needs, rather than putting their needs on the back burner as we often experience.
Thank you, Mrs. Stern. And Lauren Greenberg.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi.
we can.
Okay. Lauren Greenberg, 508 Bryan Drive. I wanted to know, I mean, I know Dr. Malash addressed this a little bit tonight, but it seems like it's constantly this one size fits all model. You know, every decision is made for the district as a whole. As you've heard in many of these comments tonight, you know, the special needs community is struggling. The elementary kids, they're struggling. This is the most vulnerable population. And you state that you're looking to get them back into school and you want to, you know, do that, but certain things need to happen, but you're not sharing what those certain things are. And I ask, can you please share them? Can you be more transparent? What needs to happen? These young kids and special needs kids are the most vulnerable population. And to that point, you listen to the student representatives who spoke tonight from the high schools, where most of the high school kids opted to remain remote. So you can see that a one size does not fit all. And it would be really appreciated if the district would take that into account more when thinking about special needs and elementary ed kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Greenberg. Kim Gallagher.
Hi, Kim Gallagher, 1537 Hillside Drive. I'm just kind of going to reiterate what Mrs. Greenberg said. I have a daughter in kindergarten, and I find the virtual format extremely difficult just for all of us. I'm getting very concerned about her academic and social development, specifically reading, when it comes to teaching that over virtual learning. I feel like there's been a lot of miscommunication over the last couple of months as to reasons why school isn't opening, and it's always a shifting target. And so as a parent, it's difficult to plan and to support my child in this whole process. But what I agree that certain groups within the district need to be focused on first, specifically elementary and special needs. And I guess my other question is I didn't realize that the Department of Health had such a stronghold as to the decision for the school district. I thought it was left up to the districts themselves. And it's confusing to me as a parent when the governor is speaking otherwise, that he really believes that kids need to be in school. So that's all I have.
Thank you. I don't see any hands, so I am to turn over to Mrs. Sugars to have comments that were mailed in read.
Okay, just a handful here. The first is from Jeff Potowitz. I hope the school board and members of the administration read the blog post on New Jersey Education Aid dated October 8th, 2020, entitled 2021 Equalized Valuation Show Economic Trends Forecast State Aid Changes. From the article, equalized valuation in a town is used to apportion county taxes and in theory to calculate and distribute equalization aid. The median gain in equalized valuation for towns was 1.66%. In Cherry Hill, the gain was 4.5%. Because our parents gained in equalized valuation significantly exceeds the state average, our district's already high, unfair local fair share in quotes will even go higher. Given that a county's equalized valuation calculations are used to balance their individual county budgets, when you use aggregate equalized valuation to determine state aid, to be fair, sorry, sorry about that. Given that a county's equalized valuation calculations are used to balance their individual county budgets, when you use aggregate equalized valuation to determine state aid, to be fair, you need to equalize the equalized valuations. Enclosed is an attachment from our calculations for direct state aid to education from 1992 to 93, totaling $12,736,606, which was over $7 million less than the $20.5 million we received approximately 30 years ago. Adjusted only for general inflation, that $12.7 million is $22.9 million in today's dollars. We received less than that today. Our categorical special education aid in 1992-93 was $4,150,000, adjusted only for inflation. That is approximately 7.4 million in today's dollars. We receive less than that today, but overall school costs have increased above inflation. Our population of at-risk students has increased significantly, while our direct state aid to education has effectively been decreased. Our community, and especially our at-risk student population, is being hurt. Leadership, take the lead and act. Please note in the calculation from 1992 to 93, equalized valuation per pupil and income per pupil is used, not the aggregate income and aggregate equalized valuation. And note the comparison to state averages per pupil. Our next comment is from Veronica Oster. Good evening. I would like to thank those who have worked tirelessly for our children in the district, especially the teachers and building principals. That being said, I would never be able to find the words to describe our extreme disappointment in those in charge of the district. We have 2 children, 1st and 4th grade students. Both children are on the autism spectrum. Their mental health has been severely impacted during this disastrous start to the school year. My mental health has also been impacted right along with that. It already was challenging enough being a parent of 2 children with special needs during a pandemic. We had managed nicely until this district and their absolutely ridiculous decision-making impacted our children in such a negative way. We understood that we needed to be flexible this school year, but not to the extent that we were put through regarding the decision-making process of the district, especially back in September. And the choice not to open had nothing to do with data and science and everything to do with incompetence. My daughter has to see friends in other neighboring well-functioning districts attend school and now take a break due to safety. If only we didn't live in Cherry Hill, it would be so much better. Something I thought I would never have to say. So thankful for the staff at Sharp Elementary. They are the only reason we wouldn't try to move. We are completely dissatisfied with the leadership and are hoping for some major changes in the near future. The next one is from Andrew Bush. I'm going to put the timer on this one because it is quite lengthy. Please find my questions for tonight's Board of Education meeting below. The blanket orders you have issued for school closures are having a disproportionately negative impact on students with special needs. What options are available through the district to provide special needs students access to in-person instruction at local learning centers or in other nearby school districts that are continuing in-person instruction? Who can parents contact to facilitate that conversation? Even if hybrid learning resumes on January 15th and is not interrupted further, Cherry Hill School District students will have missed close to a full year of in-person instruction. Can you commit to giving parents the option of having their students repeat this academic year in the 21-22 school year, particularly if you commit to providing this option for special needs students? What is the data point that you use to determine that local cases have reached levels that require schools to close? Are the following the same criteria as other Camden County school districts that were able to not only open in September, but have continued some in-person instruction? We're fortunate in this region to be in close proximity to some of the best medical research, university, and experts in the world. As a school, Cherry Hill School District reach out to experts in infectious disease or similar disciplines to help prepare for the return of in-person learning. What recommendations have they made? What is the district's current fund balance, sometimes referred to as reserve fund or emergency fund or rainy day fund? Are reserve funds being used to help better prepare facilities to handle in-person learning during the pandemic? If not, what would constitute an emergency for which these funds can be used? So please describe physical improvements to your facilities, HVAC system, desk partitions, retrofitting of classrooms that have been made to prepare schools for in-person learning. Many government agencies and other taxpayer-funded organizations have instituted pay freeze due to the budget impacts of the pandemic. In June, the district agreed to a new contract with the Cherry Hill Education Association that gives members a 3.26% raise during the current school year. Did the district talk to the union about deferring pay raises until after everyone could get a better understanding of the economic impact of this pandemic? Will non-union employees, including executive level staff, receive pay raises this year? It's understandable that some teachers and other staff have concerns about returning to in-person learning. What have you done to keep them informed about changes in protocols, upgrades to facilities, and other measures that may ease some of their concerns? Reports indicate that COVID vaccines may be ready soon. However, by all accounts, it will take several months, if not longer, for those vaccines to be available for most people. Is the availability of a vaccine going to drive your decisions on whether to open schools? At what point will you compel teachers and or other staff to return for in-person instruction? Do teachers have the option to stay remote indefinitely or refusing to report in-person instruction without sacrificing their positions? Once a return date is determined, will teachers have the option of going? I apologize, we are out of time. Rick Short, Cherry Hill School Board and District continue to make major mistakes operating in this 2020 COVID school year, continuing not to follow CDC school ventilation guidelines after being warned for months, not listening to federal experts like Dr. Fauci that says schools should be the last thing to close, and Cherry Hill and choosing to close all 19 schools after Thanksgiving, following a bad DOE state closing matrix that half the time fails district safety and not offering optional testing when one case pops up in a Cherry Hill school to reduce the spread. Closing all subcommittees to no public participation. No public participation, the district and board moves full steam ahead to have another failed bond in 2022 without any public comment. Unfortunately, myself and others have brought these 5 points to your attention, but the district and Board of Education continue to ignore the obvious. The district and board will continue to fail 11,000 Cherry Hill students, parents, and citizens of Cherry Hill. And our final comment, what is the role from Steve Tullo? What is the role of the Department of Health in making school opening and closing decisions? If this agency ultimately makes the decision, why wasn't that communicated better? And what criteria are they using to make this decision? It is urgent that you consider triaging reopening. Elementary and students with special needs must take priority. It is inappropriate to consider a one-size-fits-all method to opening schools. And that is the end of public comment.
Okay. Sorry, Ms. Sugars, did you say that was all you had?
That's it, Mrs. Seidel.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Now we can.
Okay. Sorry, I keep getting an error that my internet is unstable. Anyway, Dr. Malash, can you provide any updates or any answers to the comments from this evening?
I don't have a lot that's dramatically different from what I talked about earlier this evening. The folks that sent their comments into Mrs. Sugars, we'll try to get back on some of those questions. There's no way that I can answer all of the questions that were asked this evening, during the course of this evening. Some of the people that spoke on the phone or came on and came through where we could hear them to go in. Again, I don't know that there's a whole lot more that I can add than we've talked about already.
Okay. So that brings us to the end of our meeting. So I am going to make a motion to dismiss the meeting. Ms. Neer, can I have a second?
I second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay,
Nope.
the motion carries. Want to wish everybody a happy and healthy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
Thanksgiving to all.
Everyone.
Good night,
Thanks for
everybody.
joining
Night all.
us.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Night all.